When you're building out your LinkedIn, there are three main visual elements that you'll need to be aware of that are incredibly important for not only your main profile, but also for how you'll be seen when you're interacting with others on LinkedIn. These three visual elements are seen in almost all aspects of LinkedIn, from applying to jobs, to posting comments, to actually making your own posts, as well as when messaging and reaching out to others. And these are your first and last name, followed by your profile picture or your profile photo, and finally your headline, which we'll cover a lot more of and actually teach you how to build out in the next video. We'll also be talking about your profile banner, but just keep in mind your profile banner is not seen in the same locations as your first, last name, profile photo, and your headline. So let's dive right into it and let's start to understand where these elements are seen. So here are some examples of where these elements would be seen. As you can see here on screen in the red box, we have this person's first and last name, their profile picture, as well as their headline. Now, this is a post that this person had made, and any post that you make on LinkedIn will include these three main visual elements. Additionally, when you go and you make comments, your first and last name, as well as your profile picture and your headline will appear in the comment section as well. When you're reaching out and messaging people on LinkedIn, your profile photo seen here, as well as your first and your last name, and your headline will additionally appear in the messages. Now, in this case, we blurred out some of these important details, but just keep in mind, you would obviously be seeing this on LinkedIn without those details blurred. Additionally, you'll also see these three main visual elements when you actually search for someone on the LinkedIn platform by name. For example, in this search, we can see that we found these people with their profile picture, their first and last name, as well as their headline here. And this shows just how important these three main elements of your profile picture, your first and your last name, as well as your headline really are. They're seen all over LinkedIn, and you're going to want to make sure that yours are professionally curated in order to get the most out of your profile and when doing anything on the LinkedIn platform that involves talking to, communicating, or networking with other people. Now let's move over to my profile here. And you can see here I have a professional photo, as well as my first and last name filled out, and I have a professional headline posted right here. Now, again, we'll be talking about headlines a little bit later, so don't worry about that for right now. But for right now, I do want you to make sure that your LinkedIn profile has a very solid picture. As far as your profile picture goes, it doesn't necessarily need to be something where it's professionally taken and you pay a photographer. You can just be wearing something like a suit. You could be wearing a dress. You could be wearing a polo, whatever it is. And I suggest that you go outdoors and take it. It does still look very professional, but you do not need to invest in the traditional headshots that might cost you maybe $200, $300, $400, $500. So don't necessarily think you have to have corporate and professional and very polished headshots. Actually, the more casual headshots are becoming increasingly more popular nowadays, but keep in mind, you do want to make sure that you have some sort of picture of you here that is at least decently professional, even if it's more on the casual side, because again, this will appear everywhere. And if you don't have a profile photo, your profile photo will be generated like this, and it'll be hard for people to find you and actually understand who you are. And next is your name. And for your first and your last name, I recommend using the name that you use professionally. So for example, my name is Nicholas. Sometimes in non-professional settings, I'll go by the name of Nick, but for professional settings, I just keep it at Nicholas, as well as my last name, Mendez. Now you can use whatever name you want here, but again, I recommend the one that you use most professionally, whatever version of your name that you use that people know you as. And when people go to actually search you on LinkedIn, that's the name that you should be using. Now to edit these two elements, we can go onto our profile when we're signed in and we can click this pencil icon. And from here, we can go ahead and fill in our first and last name. Now you'll notice here, I have my certification on my last name. You can do that if you're wanting to add your certifications or whatever degree or anything else there. I recommend keeping it simple. So for example, if you had a master's in business administration, you could do something like your last name, comma, MBA like that. Now, if you have a specific certification you're wanting to put here, I just recommend putting one, your most important certification. So for example, if you had a CISP certification, you might put your CISP. In my case, I just have my PMP and I like having it in my name. So I put it there, or you could just put your last name just like that. Now, one more thing you should be aware of is there is the option for an additional name here. I do not like this feature on LinkedIn because it kind of makes you look like you're putting your middle name instead of an additional name. For example, in my case, again, professionally, I go by Nicholas. Personally, I go by Nick. But if I put the additional name of Nick in here, you can see that we are going to have that in the middle of my name. So let's go ahead and save it so I can show you. And this is what it actually looks like. So as you can see, it puts in Nicholas, parentheses, Nick Mendez. You can decide if you want to do that. I actually don't recommend doing that. I think it can get a little bit confusing, even though most people know what your first and last name are. And I just like keeping it simple and just putting the first and last name that I use professionally. All right, so once you have your first and your last name here, go ahead and click save. And then from there, we'll go ahead and exit out of here. And let's talk about the last visual element that's important for your LinkedIn page specifically. And this is your banner. Now, again, as I mentioned, your profile picture, your first and your last name, as well as your headline will appear in multiple places on LinkedIn, from comments to posts to job applications to messages. But there is one important visual element that will only be displayed on your profile, and that is your profile banner. As you can see here, this is my profile banner. I recommend that you make one. You can use something like Canva to make it yourself, or you can hire someone on Fiverr to make this banner for you. Now, the main thing you're going to want to put in here is just your current or aspiring job title, and we can put different achievements like self-published author here, or you could put your certifications, your degree, really whatever it is. So you can make your banner however really you want to make it. There are so many different options out there, and let me show you one more example of a banner that I really like that you can go ahead and take a look at as well. All right, so this gentleman has a great example of a LinkedIn banner. As you can see, the way that he designed it was for the LinkedIn profile picture to not actually take up any space in the left-hand side. That's an important part of the whole LinkedIn banner because you want to make sure that when your head or your profile picture is in there, that it's not over any sort of text. Like for example, on mine, you can see here that if we were to add any text, say here in the photo, it would be taken up by my actual profile picture. So just keep that in mind when you're testing and when you're building your LinkedIn profile banner to actually create it and leave some room for your profile picture here because no matter what your profile picture, it is going to pop up in there. And as you can see on this gentleman's, he did a great job of keeping his profile picture area completely clear. So as you can see here, he left all the space, and I do highly recommend that you do that when you're going through and you're creating your LinkedIn banner. And additionally, he is running his own company, but you can kind of see here, he has his sort of job title or his positioning within his company or what he would consider positioning within the market, as well as his different certifications. And to recap, we covered your LinkedIn profile picture. Remember, just take a casual photo. It doesn't need to be anything crazy, maybe something outdoors in a suit, a polo, a dress, just something that makes you look good and makes you look professional and very casual. Second, we have your LinkedIn name. Remember, this is your first and last name, and I recommend using the name that people will actually look you up by or that you go by professionally. And then from there, we have your LinkedIn headline, which we'll teach you how to build later on in this course. And we also have the banner, which appears only on your profile. And overall, each of these elements make up a core part of not only your LinkedIn profile, but also how you appear in searches, how you appear in messaging, how you appear when you apply for jobs, as well as how you appear when you comment, post, and much, much more.